ask yourself, is this a safe world or not? And in a lot of ways it isn't. And also it is. So probably right now, wherever you are, you're perfectly safe. We're going to talk about how to deal with anxiety. All these different kinds of anxiety basically have, pretty much the same cure. But if you feel that kind of low-level, free-form anxiety, just general feeling unsafe in the world, you want to begin to some practices that will create safety. Begin to create a sense of safety, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you might have this free-form or generalized anxiety. The other kind of anxiety that's possible for people is trauma-related anxiety. So trauma-related anxiety is when you've had a traumatic experience, and it could be childhood trauma or it really could be any kind of trauma. And that lingering effects, sort of like post-traumatic stress disorder, which is basically what I'm talking about. So if you've been traumatized at all in your life, you may be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety is one of the hallmark features of this. So if we start with sort of the premise of anxiety is not being safe, feeling safe in the world, then we add trauma on top of this, and you really have some proof. Now you've got it, a proof that the world isn't safe, and whatever trauma happened to you has left you with probably, unless you've really, really worked on it, has left you with quite a lot of residual emotions, regarding your trauma. And this trauma can be this life as an adult, as a child. I think a lot of empaths and sensitives feel trauma from past lives, which have a really different sort of flavor to them. But all of those, we're going to talk about that too, but all these kinds of different traumas create sort of like a reservoir of emotional goo that we have to learn how to work through. And some people with trauma, unhealed trauma, unresolved trauma, take it more towards anxiety, and other people take it more towards depression. So you can ask yourself which one you're likely to go with that. And I guess I also just want to ask you guys, do you know the difference between anxiety and fear? Because it's really important to understand that when you're dealing with anxiety. Fear is a perfectly legitimate response to a dangerous situation. So say, for example, you're walking down the street, or you're walking through a path in the woods, and a bear jumps out at you, right? You're going to feel fear, and the fear will fire your adrenal glands. We talked about this last time. Your adrenal glands will fire, your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system will fire, and that creates the adrenaline response in you, fight or flight response. So your nerves go into high alert, and fight, flight, or freeze. That response will probably save your life. That's what this is designed for. So you run away from the bear, you climb a tree, you get really small, the bear doesn't see you. Your fear response has done its job, and you live another day. Good for you. So that's fear. We don't want to get rid of fear because it's really good to have that life-saving nervous system response. Anxiety is different, though. Anxiety is 2 weeks later, you're walking down the same path, and because the last time you were there, a bear jumped out at you, you have the same fear response because you think a bear might jump out at you even though there isn't actually one there. So anxiety is like the same fear response gets triggered, the same fight or flight, adrenal response gets triggered even though there's no direct stimulation, there's no bear, there's no actual danger. So anxiety is a fear response that the mind has created. Your mind created the picture of the bear. Your mind remembered the bear. And so anxiety is very draining. You can see how this would really, really sap your nervous system. So fear doesn't damage your adrenal glands. Anxiety does, because what can happen is our mind will play over the memory of that event if we don't release the trauma from that event from our system. Your mind will replay that event over and over again, re-traumatizing you, recreating the event, re-stimulating your nervous system in a way where it's not in direct correlation to something that's actually happening. So anxiety is this nervous system response to a trauma that's not happening in the present moment. It's only happening in your mind, the memory of it. And then all the related feelings with that memory come to the surface. So it's really important to understand that as human beings, we will always feel anxiety. And there's some sort of healthy anxiety. There's healthy ways to feel that sensation. But most of us live in sort of the unhealthy side of it, and that's what I'm sort of asking you to take a look at here.